Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Akshay Puneet. Are you there? Akshay Puneet has
Yes,
gone.
sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
You're there? Shall we get going? What, Akshay?
Yes, sir.
We'll get
Yes,
going?
sir.
All right.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, I hope everyone else agrees that we can get going. Okay. So the last time when I was talking to you, that was a few days ago. Incidentally, not that it's of any great interest to you, but I've got a COVID negative report as of yesterday. But I have been told that I have to be under isolation for another week and go for a test again. One requires to get 2 negative reports because some of the strains of the virus have a tendency to surface later. Sorry. So that is the thing. So yeah. So as I was saying, we were talking about Greek cosmology. And I was saying that despite Greek being ancient Greece also having some kind of a cosmological thought, they do have anthropomorphic gods. Okay, in fact, most of their gods, as we see them, are those who are anthropomorphic, meaning that they have the shape of human beings. Okay, and Greek mythology, like all mythologies, basically took recourse to explaining the natural world or the universe, if you want to call it, please call it that, in supernatural terms. Okay, so for example, if there is a thing like what should we say? Yeah, if there is a question like where is the earth resting, which was an often asked question in ancient Greece, uh, then the answer would be um, the earth is resting on the shoulders of Atlas, which is what one would describe as a supernatural explanation. Okay. Um, Now, the Greek cosmology is a little more muddled than the ancient Indian and Egyptian cosmologies, in the sense that not only are their gods anthropomorphic, they also have qualities which are human. And so you will see that, there are stories like Prometheus bringing fire down from heaven to earth and things like that. So the idea is that we have to be able to look at this mythology as also having human inputs. So probably, sorry, in the telling of the stories, or the telling of the Greek myths, the repeated telling of them, and a few things will get added and a few things will get deleted. Well, 50% of the Supreme Court test staff test positive. That's the latest news. Okay. All right. So, positive for COVID, that is. Yeah. Uh, so, this muddling up of mythologies with human stories and all led to a certain kind of discontentment among some people. Sorry, the people who are the people who were first, uh, or at least recorded history shows that the first people who were completely dissatisfied with a mythological understanding of the first people who were not very happy with a mythological understanding were the Milesians. I told you that Milesians comes from this polis, which is called Miletus. I hope you remember this. And though they are called a school, they are not people who worked together. Please remember this. Very often in Western philosophy and Western political philosophy, we keep coming across these schools of thought. It doesn't mean that all these people went together or worked together on certain issues. It doesn't hold such meanings at all. Very much to the contrary. Uh, Quite a few times you'll find that these people worked independently of each other. Then one has to answer the question, why call them a school? Okay, if they have not worked together, why call them a school at all? So the answer for that is that if they are in some way or the other trying to also look at the questions raised by their predecessors uh, and responding to those questions, then you'll say that they form one school. Let me give you an example from the 20th century. You have this whole thing called the Frankfurt School. 1 second, please. Sorry about that. That's not a COVID cough. That's my wife cooking something potent. And so, well, as usual, my jokes don't make anyone laugh. That's something that I have come to terms with in life. Anyway, so if we take the example of the Frankfurt School, probably the earliest member of that was Max Horkheimer. And Horkheimer, having worked along with Theodor Adorno, uh, who's also a member of the Frankfurt School, because they all went to the University of Frankfurt, not necessarily as students, but were uh, teachers in the in the University of Frankfurt. Okay, and so they are called the Frankfurt School. But if you look at the timelines, uh, Horkheimer was somewhere in the 1920s, Adorno was in the 1920s, and then you'll see that Herbert Marcuse was somewhere in the 1920s, and then he left the Frankfurt School, the Frankfurt University, and went to the Boston University in America. And despite that, you will see that Herbert Marcuse's philosophy is something that is classified as the philosophy of the Frankfurt School, because it has ingredients in it which were discussed by the Frankfurt School. The last of these great people, by that I don't mean and he's still alive, by the way, is Jurgen Habermas. And he came into the picture somewhere around the 50s. Now, the Frankfurt School is also called the Critical Theory School. Now, when you call it the Critical Theory School and not the Frankfurt School, then you add on a few more people, like the Hungarian thinker Georgi Lukács. Okay. Now, so what are they critical of? See, they were basically trying to understand the theoretical shortcomings of Marxism. Okay, because Marxism and Karl Marx himself had said that he had cracked the mystery of how capitalism works, how it subjugates the worker to the capitalist, and therefore he denied national boundaries. He said national boundaries are drawn by capitalists. They are not drawn by the people of a particular nation state. So he wanted a global community, and therefore he called his own uh, form of a future society communism. And here, sorry, I must bring to your notice that while Marx talked about communism, there are so many people who confront me and tell me I'm not a Marxist, incidentally, but that doesn't mean that I fail to uh, recognize the tremendous contribution that Karl Marx made to not just Western political thought, but to Western Europe in general. Okay, otherwise, Western Europe would have been like what America is today. Okay, the fact that it became a welfareist kind of a, the emergence of a welfare state in the Western Europe is a result of the Marxist intervention, Marxist philosophical intervention, if you like. Though Marx wouldn't call himself a philosopher, he'll call himself a political economist. Anyway, so if you talk about Marx, so Marx never said that communism will happen. He was not making an astrological prediction. Okay, what Marx was saying is communism has to happen. People have to make it happen. And who are the people who have to make it happen? It is the working class or the proletariat. So he said, the workers of the world unite. Okay. So he said, workers of the world unite. And he thought and he believed that if workers of the world united, then basically there would be the probability of a revolution. And sorry, he basically said that the revolution, if necessary, has to be bloody because the capitalist won't let go of uh, the capitalists, sorry, won't let go of their power so easily. Okay, they won't let go of their power so easily. So you'll have to wrest it away from them, take it away from them, which essentially means that you have to fight. And therefore, he said that workers should not subscribe to the nation state boundaries. Okay, he said there is a universal class called the working class, and the interests of this working class are all the same because they are subjects of capitalism and exploitation of the capitalist variety. So he said, when if the workers of the world unite and if they overthrow the capitalists, then then they have to fight for the establishment of a classless society. Because Karl Marx's theory of history tells you that all human history is the history of class struggle. So he wanted to rid human society of classes, and he wanted to have a society that is based in equality, where there would be no owners of the means of production and no workers working for wages. Uh, so there would be, you know, everybody working. Uh, a little bit of a populist thinker, Alvin Toffler, actually used um, he coined a new phrase where he kind of said that there will be no distinction between uh, the producer and the consumer, and he called them the prosumers. Okay, but the important thing is none of these things happened. All right, none of these things actually happened. So the Frankfurt School, starting with Max Horkheimer and coming down to Jurgen Habermas, let me put their names down. All these people were trying to find out, not, uh, they were not looking at a practical difficulty in the creation of the revolution. They were not looking at that. What they were looking at was, are there any theoretical shortcomings, or are there any theoretical contradictions within Marxism which led to the failure of Marxism in reaching the goal that it wanted to reach, which is sorry, the unity of the working class, the overthrowing of the capitalist class, and the setting up of uh, what we would call the dictatorship of the proletariat, and then moving on towards communism. So they wanted to explore if there are any theoretical causes. So that's what makes them a school. Max Horkheimer does it in one way. Theodore Adorno basically does it by taking the example of music, atonal music, and he brings that as a way to critique Marxist theory. They were sympathetic to the cause. Please don't uh, lose sight of that. They were not anti-Marxist. They were sympathetic to the cause of Marxism, but some of them saw Stalinism on the rise, and Stalin's communism was no different from Nazism of Hitler and fascism of Mussolini. Freshta Hakiki, why are you drawing that line? Hmm? Okay. Now, let
Sorry.
me put this for you here. Okay, this is, you might be wondering, what am I saying when this is the word which we all say fascism. It's not fascism, it's fascism. It comes from the Italian word fasce, which basically means a bundle, usually of sticks. So when fascism came into being, this fascism is pronounced fascism. So fascism, when it came into being, was not a negative thing. In fact, Antonio Gramsci, one of the famous thinkers of the 20th century, was initially a supporter of fascism. Uh, the fascist idea was that you should have a construction of a strong Italian nation state. If you know the history of Western Europe, you'll see that Germany and Italy were the last of the nation states, and they became nation states only towards the end of the 19th century. Germany under Bismarck and uh, Italy under Garibaldi and Mazzini. Okay, so Benito Mussolini was basically claiming that he would build a fasce where the Italian nation state would be very, very strong. And so he said, if you have sticks, you can break each of them. They're easy to break. But if you bundle many sticks together and bind them, then you can't break them. So that's why he named the political party that he floated, uh, he named it as fascist. Okay, that which would work like a fasce. Similarly, Nazism, today it's a bad word, right? But Nazi stood for National Socialism. Okay, there's nothing wrong with something which is in the nature of National Socialism. But what was done under the name of National Socialism by Hitler was something which was not condonable. And the same thing holds for the fascist regime of Benito Mussolini. But you rarely find the word Nazi being used on people because it is, again, it has that specific ideological component, which is National Socialism. So people don't say if somebody is trying to be a dictator or anything, they don't say Nazi, but fascist, because fasce has no ideological component. It's only, bringing things together. So somebody who becomes a dictator has now become, you will say he's got fascist ideas. And in fact, some of the critics of the BJP and the way in which it is dealing with issues in India, they say that they are showing tendencies of fascism. Now, whether that is true or not, please discuss that in the Indian government and politics class, not here. But fascism as a word has stuck, right? And unfortunately, due to the persecution of Leon Trotsky uh, and any other form of opposition that came his way by Joseph Stalin, if you go by that, then what you do find is that um, he replicated the model of a dictatorship. Okay, so communism, it was very easy for the Americans See, at one time, people used to talk about there being a communist propaganda because they used to sell books at a very cheap price about Marxism, about revolution, about Lenin. Uh, so they used to sell books at a very cheap price. They were available for 1 rupee in my childhood. Uh, in fact, Progress publishers of the USSR, the erstwhile Soviet Union, they sold copies of the Capital, Das Kapital, as it is called. Uh, they sold those for something like 45 rupees or 50 rupees, the 3 volumes, whereas the Penguin edition of that was nearly 900 rupees. Okay, so that was the kind of price difference. So they said this is propaganda. Okay, while it is propaganda, no doubt about that, but very few people took cognizance of the American propaganda. Okay, the American propaganda machinery is far more subtle and is something that is done in such a way that you tend to believe that the Americans are right and the uh, rest of the world is wrong. That's how they would like you to look at it. And thanks to our good friend Donald Trump, we today know what America really is. Okay, that what Trump has shown to the world is the real America. It comprises of stupid people, basically. Before him, George W. Bush also showed glimpses of what America really was, but the Trump basically opened up the entire screen and showed all the things that were happening behind the curtain. Okay, he withdrew the curtain completely and let the people know what was happening. So America also was involved in propaganda. So they showed communism as something bad. And very often people ask this question, what happened to Marxism? So these people were trying to argue that they were trying to understand what it is that is falling short, or what is it that is wrong with Marxism that the working class revolution has failed to happen. So they all have their questions. We have to do a few of these people in the next semester. So I'll save that for the next semester. But please remember that a school basically doesn't have to be people working together. They can be people working at different times, but usually they are working in the same place, as it happened in this case, which is the University of Frankfurt. So they were called the Frankfurt School. Similarly, you had the Vienna Circle, which was the logical positivists, and it consisted of people like Moritz Schlick, Otto Neurath, and Rudolf Carnap. We'll have to speak about them sometime. We will. These are all people that we have to be discussing. So we will be speaking about the Vienna Circle, and that happened in around 1916. But not all of them were there at the same time. In fact, even though he's not really a part of the logical positivist group, some people would say Karl Popper should be added on to this particular group. But we'll come to that when the time is ripe. For the time being, let us return to Miletus. Okay, and let us try to understand the Milesian School. Like I told you the other day, the first member of the Milesian School is Thales. Okay, and Thales is somebody who precedes both the other members, Anaximander and Anaximenes, who were more or less some kind of contemporaries. But Thales is not. And I also told you that Thales is uh, seen by many as the first ever Greek philosopher. Now, what is it that Thales did? Why is he considered as the first ever Greek philosopher? Please remember, when we talk about somebody being first ever and all, it only means that they are the documented people. It doesn't necessarily mean that he was in fact the first. It can be, if that is a happy coincidence, good. But usually when somebody says Thales is the first ever Greek philosopher, it essentially means that he is the first documented person who acted who thought like a philosopher, raised questions that were about philosophy. And I told you the word philosopher comes from philos, okay? And philos is nothing but knowledge, earth, everything. It encompasses everything, right? So a philosopher was somebody who was exhaustively trying to understand something, not just one aspect of life, but was somebody who's trying to understand life itself. That is what it means. So, if we talk about Thales, then Thales is the person who challenged the idea. He asked this question: I'm standing on the floor of this building. And where is the building standing? The building is standing on the earth. And where is the earth standing? So it's going into this causal regress. Okay. So you have to understand that Thales was also somebody who probably, it it's a probable argument. Please don't take it as a definite argument. We say it's probable because nobody has rebutted this, and nobody has said, no, there are other people who show the same thing or a similar thing. Uh, he seems to show us a causal analysis. So what is a causal analysis? Anybody? Anybody would like to tell me what a causal analysis is? See, a causal analysis, let me not put it here. Let me put it here. Mhm. It uses a cause effect sequencing. Okay, it uses a cause effect sequencing, right? So what is a cause effect sequencing? You first see an effect and then you try to understand a cause. So instead of speaking abstractly, let me give you an example of something that happened in my house a couple of years ago. Suddenly, in our staircase, a fire broke out. Okay, and it was a pretty dangerous looking fire. And we had to call uh, the firefighting brigade. They came and put the fire out, and that is the effect. Okay, that we had a pretty big burning fire in the house, and that was due to what? That is the attempt to understand what caused the fire. Okay, now there were three electricity meters, because we have three electric connections, and now apparently something went wrong in one of them. So the question was, which of the uh, electricity connections short circuited and why? So you're searching for a cause. So after getting an electrician and even an electrical engineer, they had a look, and then they said that the fire seemed to have emanated from the ground floor, or the the service line or whatever that comes into the ground floor. And they asked us how old is uh, the electrical lining in the ground floor. And I said it is probably as old as a house, which is quite old, you know. And they said, no, you have to change the wiring every 25 years. So they diagnosed the cause as the old wiring in the house. And because of the wiring having become very old, it would have probably led to the polyurethane cover that is usually there on the copper. That particular thing would have cracked and come off. And so two wires could well have come into contact with each other. And that is probably what led to the fire. So that was the explanation. Now, here, if you look at what I have just said, now we said the effect is the fire. What is the cause? The cause is the wiring in the ground floor house. So that is the cause, the wiring, or a short circuiting of the wiring. That's the cause. Now you're asking a question. What caused the short circuit in the first place? So now when you say what caused the short circuit, then the effect now is the short circuit. Okay, the effect is the short circuit, and the cause we have to look into. So the cause was supposed to be the old wiring. Now, old wiring is the cause. But why should old wiring be a cause? So you have to find a cause for an answer for that. So the cause for old wiring being, so the old wiring is now an effect. What is the cause? The cause is that polyurethane probably wore off and led to the short circuiting, because two wires that shouldn't come into contact with each other came into contact with each other. So you might say, all right, so that is the effect. Two wires coming, and that it is the polyurethane uh, which is the cause, the wearing off of the polyurethane. Then you'll ask yourself this question: why did polyurethane come off? Why did it wear off? Then you'll say, you'll look into the properties of polyurethane, and you'll say the way in which polyurethane is made, it retains its suppleness over a certain period of time, but with excessive oxidation building up inside or whatever, then the polyurethane loses that flexibility and its capacity to insulate over a period of time. So as it gets older, it loses that capacity to insulate. So now that is the cause. The effect is the wearing off. You can go back further. Why does polyurethane wear off after some years? Then you'll go into the manufacture of that. Okay, you will say so and so ingredients go. These are the ones that are likely to get hard. So you know what you have with cause effect sequencing. When you look at this particular kind of thing, you are faced with one problem, which is we face the problem of infinite regress. Okay, what is infinite regress? If you go on searching for a cause, which is a pure cause, you're not likely to find it. Okay, you're not likely to find a pure cause. You're going to find everything which is a cause and an effect. It is a cause of an effect and an effect of a cause. Similarly, if I say what happened after the fire, I'm not stopping there. Then you'll say we replace the wiring. So there's infinite progress again happening there. We had to replace the wiring. We had to repaint the whole walls that had, this burnt look. How much money did it cost me? And as a result of that, what happened to me? What happened to my savings? So you can keep going in both directions and like a straight line, okay, which is infinite. You can't end it. So Thales was using a cause effect sequencing, and he understood that he was facing this particular problem. The problem that he was facing is, which is a pure cause. A pure cause is a cause only, not an effect of anything else. Something which is a pure cause, not an effect of any other thing. That is what Thales is looking for. To break the problem of infinite regress. Infinite progress is okay. You can keep on explaining as things are happening. Okay? But infinite regress is a problem. Because if you can't stop somewhere, then you don't know where you begin. Okay? So when you look at what Thales was doing, he realized that I'm doing a cause effect sequencing and that I have the problem of this infinite regress. So I have to find some way of stopping this infinite regress. So what is this thing that Thales finds which stops the infinite regress? He says one has to search for a primary substance, a primary substance from which everything else emanated. Okay, so that is his attempt at trying to stop the infinite regress. Attempt, because he doesn't stop it, right? So what, according to him, is the primary substance? For him, you must understand, Miletus is also in the province of Ionia, and you have a thing called the Ionian Sea, SEA. Okay, I'm sorry. So you have the problem, you had the Ionian Sea. Incidentally, some people call the Milesian School the Ionian School. That is not a very correct way to describe them. Anyway, so if you're talking about the Ionian Sea, uh, what Thales thought was that if I'm resting on the floor of this building, and if this building is resting on the floor of, I'm sorry, if it is resting on the earth, and where is the earth resting? He said it is resting, the earth is resting in water, which is the primary substance. Okay. He said water is the primary substance. Everything rests in water. Now, that is not a very satisfactory answer, is it? Because you can ask, where is this water resting? People did ask. Where is this water resting? And Thales said, look, when something becomes a primary substance from which everything else emanates, then the question of where the primary substance rests is an invalid question. Okay, I will come back to this. I will come back to this particular idea of proof of everything when we do the social contractualists. I'll also be doing René Descartes, and I'll pick up his very famous Has anybody heard of this? Anyone?
No.
No,
You haven't heard of cogito ergo sum?
no,
But
sir.
you've heard of Descartes, right? You were telling me about coordinates and all that.
Yes,
Hmm?
sir.
Hmm. Have you heard its English version?
I think I am there. Therefore, I am.
Hmm. You have. Good.
Yes.
What does that mean? Any idea, Akshay?
It means he thinks he is there, so that he will be.
Hmm. He
It
thinks
is
he's
an
there.
idea, sir.
Hmm. No. Think. I don't see. Has Padma Navanand left?
I'm here, sir.
Yeah. Have you heard of it?
No, sir.
You didn't hear, I think, therefore I am. Hmm? No. Well, actually, it's a complicated thing. I'm not going to tell you that story now. Descartes falls under a school called radical skepticism. Okay? Why is it called radical skepticism? Because he is asking for proof of he's asking himself for the proof of his own existence. Okay, he's asking himself, how do I know I exist? That is the question that he raised. How do I know that I exist? What is the proof? So Descartes does the same cause effect sequencing, and he takes it to what he calls rock bottom. You take the cause effect sequencing, the infinite regress problem, but he says that can be solved if you go to the rock bottom, which is if you can't question things further anymore. Okay, so right now I'm not going to go into the detailed explanation of that. I think, therefore I am. It basically means the proof of my existence is I am thinking. And if you ask him, how do you know you're thinking? Or if you ask yourself, how do I know I am thinking? Then that is a contradiction in logical terms. You're thinking. That's why you're asking these questions, right? So if you say, how do I know I'm thinking? Then you're contradicting yourself. I'll explain that in detail. Right now, it will sound a little confusing. Okay. So my thinking is the proof of my existence. That is what is being said by René Descartes. This is, he said it in Latin. Cogito. Cogito is thought. In English also, we have cogitation. 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 Ergo is therefore. Sum. I am. I exist actually. It's not I am, it is I exist, if you translate it literally. But you should not translate things literally. You have to translate them a little metaphorically. So it is I think, therefore I am, which is my thinking process is the proof of my existence. So that for him is the rock bottom. You can't go below that without contradicting yourself. You can't go below that is not an arbitrary thing without contradicting yourself. So Thales is attempting a similar answer, but in a very, very, not a very, very, I think that'll be taking it too
I
far.
have a doubt, sir.
Uh, Sorry, yeah.
Can't we exist without thinking?
Can't we exist?
Without thinking, we can.
Uh, I told you, isn't it? Rene Descartes believes in the mind-body dualism. The mind can exist without the body. The body can exist without the mind. The mind can know of its existence without the body because the function of thinking is that of the mind. Okay. And therefore, he basically believes that the mind can know of its existence. The body also can exist without the mind, but the body does not have the cogitation or thinking capability. Since it cannot think, even if it exists, it doesn't know that it exists. So if you look at Hegelian idea of the phenomenology of the spirit, it is an answer to a number of questions that had been raised by thinkers before him. One of the thinkers that he's answering to, one of the things, I'm sorry, that he is, or he thinks he's putting to rest is this mind-body dualism that René Descartes raised. And another thing that he believes that he's putting to rest is the triad of Rousseau, which is family, bourgeois civil society, and the state. And Rousseau was anti-nation state, pro-city state, but Hegel says nation states are fine. So he thinks he's giving an answer to Rousseau. He also thinks he's solving the Kantian antinomies. An antinomy is, very simply put, I'm giving you a very simple definition. An antinomy is a contradiction that doesn't have an answer, okay, or that can never have a full answer, right? I'll talk about that when we come to Rousseau, okay? Um, so anyway, uh, so if you look at cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am. Okay, so what Thales is doing, and rather, what should I say? He's doing it rather, I'm amused looking at Freshta Hakiki walking on the road somewhere. Oh, no. Uh, okay. So, yeah. So if you're looking at uh, the answer given by Thales is that he has also reached a rock bottom by saying that there is a primary substance and that the primary substance is water and that everything comes out of water. Okay, so you and I might think what kind of an answer is that, and people did think what kind of an answer is that, but there is more than a modicum of truth in that whole thing of primary substance being water. Because if you actually look at it without his knowing, perhaps, or maybe he knew, we don't know, that life originated in water. Okay, today all science will tell you that life originated in water and it moved on to land. It did not originate on land. And it is believed even today that there are more life forms under the oceans or in the oceans than on the earth. There are more species in the water than there are on earth. Okay, even today that is there. And people have done some kind of a sequencing, and the transformation from unicellular simple organisms to complex multicellular organisms happened in water first and then came on to land, and they have identified a creature called Kaya. Please don't take this to be body. In our Indian languages, Kaya means body. It also means skin. It's not that. This Kaya is different. It is supposed to be the first organism within water which was showing transformation from simple unicellular to complex multicellular organisms. And even however many reptiles we know that are on land, which are very poisonous, it is believed that the most poisonous snake on land is the black mamba. And the black mamba is capable, if its full venom is used, it is capable of killing nearly 100 people. That's how venomous that snake is. And even a king cobra can kill easily up to 20 fully grown adults with its venom. But far more venomous snakes are supposed to be in water. Anyway, so you shouldn't dismiss Thales, because it is on the basis of his idea that primary substance is water. A lot of modern science investigated into water and they tried to find out. In fact, I think it is Kenneth Clark, the historian, who made this famous television serial, and that also came out as a book called Civilization. But that book has nothing to do with this argument that I'm going to tell you. Kenneth Clark says that, we are so obsessed with outer space. Okay, he says we are so obsessed with outer space. Uh, we want to know about if life exists in outer space that we don't look at the oceans. He says we have hardly skimmed the surface of the oceans. We need to go deeper inside to find out what is life in the oceans. We know very little about oceans, is what he says. Okay. Whereas if you go by the ancient Indian school of thought, there is no outer space, there is only inner space, mind. Okay. If you introspect, you understand yourself, then you know what the world is. Anyway, but that again is a digression. I don't want to go back there, right? But the question that I won't tell you the reason, but I was once summoned by this, what is his name? Chinnajiyar Swami. And basically, I don't know if you know this, even grains of sand are supposed to have a soul. There's nothing in the universe which is soulless, and therefore the entire universe is a life form. So I had told this to someone, he heard it and he called me. And he said, "What did you mean by that?" And I told him that the main thing is that the Westerners ask, "Are we alone in this world?" And I said, my answer to that is we are not alone. Everything is a life system. Everything has life in this world. So how can we be alone? And he said, that's a very valid argument. Uh, anyway, so that's a different thing altogether. So for us, that is not a question at all. Are we alone in this world? We are not. We are not. The whole world is a life system. Okay, so there's no question of us being alone. Now, so if you go back to the water thing, Thales is extremely important for that particular reason. He is important because he was trying to identify a primary substance, and that for him was water. Now, if you look at him after a few years in the Milesian school, we have the next thinker who, in my opinion, and considered opinion at that, is probably eons ahead of the man who preceded him, which is Thales, and the man who followed him, who was his contemporary, of course, uh, Anaximander. He is way, way ahead of them. And his name is, I told you, Anaximander. Now, Anaximander is a fascinating philosopher, by far the most fascinating among all the ancient Greeks. And you should understand that it is due to Anaximander that today we have a theory of gravity. It is due to Anaximander that we have an understanding of space. It is due to Anaximander that we have a theory that the Earth is an ellipse. Actually, it is a sphere, but it's an ellipsoidal sphere that is rotating on its own axis. It is due to him that all these modern theories came into being. Okay, so what is it that Anaximander said? This is one set of, before I go to that, let me also talk about another set of questions and answers that can be attributed to Anaximander from the 20th century and the 19th century. Okay, you have this whole idea of existentialism, uh, and if you read somebody like Jean-Paul Sartre, Jean-Paul Sartre talks about being and nothingness. Okay, and you have Heidegger, who talks about a phenomenology. Okay, and he talks about a thrownness of being and trying to find the reasons for our existence. So, in philosophy, traditionally, we have had two forms of thinking. One is, have you heard of these words?
Yes, sir.
Tell me, what is epistemology?
Body of knowledge.
Body of knowledge, not body of knowledge. Okay, but we'll go by that. What is ontology?
I don't know.
Okay. Epistemology is okay, it comes from the Greek word episteme, which can mean two things. One is it means and the other thing it means framework, a framework in which you use, in which you view knowledge. It can mean either of these two things. Okay. On the other hand, ontology is Pursuit of being. Akshay, did you understand what this is? I wrote that capital B deliberately, not my bad typing.
No,
Any
sir.
idea what it is?
Yes, sir.
No? Madam Padma, have you heard of these words?
Yes, sir.
You have? No, I didn't get you. Yes or
Um,
no?
yes, sir. I'm just confused how to explain that. Uh,
You
so
heard of
the
ontology.
yes.
Very
So
good.
it tells about the nature of a being.
Nature of a
I
being.
am unable to tell you exactly.
Okay. Which college did you study, Padma?
I'm from Saint Anne, sir.
You're from St.
I
Anne's.
finished my degree Saint Anne.
They taught you this there?
Unfortunately, no.
Ah, I was wondering when did Afshan start teaching all this? So, okay. Akshay, which college are you from?
University Arts and Science College, sir. Warangal.
No, that is, you're there now. I'm asking about where you did your graduation.
It's University Arts and Science College, Hanmakonda.
Oh, Hanmakonda. Okay, okay, okay. I thought you were talking about this. Okay. Hanmakonda, then I have special affection for you. That's
Thank you.
my native place. Though I've never been there long enough. I've been there a couple of times, but not long enough. My father was born, brought up, and everything there. He's from Hanmakonda, and he passed away a couple of years ago, and he wanted to actually go and see how Hanmakonda was, but he was not in a position to go. I couldn't take him. A regret. Anyway, uh, good, good. But you picked up very good stuff. Pursuit of being has to be understood as being is equal to our state of existence. Our state of existence is the being. Okay. Ontology of the earliest variety, which gets attributed to Zeno of Elia, about whom I'll be talking after the Milesian School. We'll be talking about Parmenides and Zeno. Uh, they belong to what is called the Elian School. These are all schools, no? Wonderful. So he also talks about the next step as becoming. Okay. So in the kind of ontology that you see in Zeno, Zeno, we find ontology of being and becoming. It incorporates both. But in modern ontology, the becoming part is not so important. What is more important is the discovery of who we are, why are we here, why should we undergo the problems of this life, why should you listen to this fat man every morning at 9 o'clock talking rubbish? You know, I'm sure that question has crossed. How many of you are left? 13. Okay. Uh, when we started with 24 students. Now we are down to 13, and surely in a few days it'll be down to 3. That is how things go, and then everybody disappears. So that's because people start asking themselves this ontological question: what are we doing in this fat man's class? Okay, that is an ontological question. What are we do? Why are we in his class? What did we do to deserve this fellow? Right? Those are all ontological questions. Anyway, so to come back to Anaximander, in Anaximander, there is a primitive ontology, not a very well developed ontology, but there are both the epistemic and the ontology or epistemological and the ontological uh, dimensions embedded in Anaximander's philosophy. Now, what did Anaximander say which made him so different from everyone else and made him so ahead of those people who even followed him? First and foremost, you must look at Anaximander as having denied the existence of a primary substance. This is his very big difference from the other Greek thinkers of his time, especially Thales and Anaximenes and Heraclitus. Okay, he denied the existence of a primary substance. So the question then is, what do we mean by, how do we explain the earth, where we are, what we are? How do we have to explain these things? So he says, I should leave this here, but just keep this in mind. Okay. He basically says that there is no primary substance. The world comes into being because of a combination of opposites. So, apart from epistemology, let me put these here so that you know what all his contribution. I shouldn't have. He also has the dialectical method. No wonder he is a very, very big influence on Marx and Engels. Okay, though to say that he's an influence only on Marx and Engels is a big no-no, because he influenced, like I said, Galileo, Newton. You can talk of so many people who came under his influence, right? So the world comes into being because of a combination of opposites. So what are the opposites? Let's pick up a couple of examples. Wet and dry, then cold and hot, light and dark. Actually, it should be darkness. So it is a combination of these opposites. He says opposites have a tendency to move into each other. And I'm sure you agree. If you take a water bottle out of a refrigerator and put it in a normal room, especially in the summer, within no time, the refrigerated water loses its coolness, right? So if it's losing its coolness, then what is it? It basically means that hot and cold come together. So if you want to dry something which is wet, let's say there's a wet patch, you can dry it by pouring sand on it, which is dry, right? So they again come together. Light and darkness come together. Everything for him comes together. And that's how the world is made, which is a very fascinating argument. And it becomes even more fascinating when you see what he says next. He says all these opposites, because you can ask him, where are they coming from? And he says they are coming from a nothingness. Okay, they are all there in a nothingness, which in our modern parlance, his kind of nothingness is space. So the planet Earth is a result of these things coming together. Okay, all these opposites coming together. And because these opposites come together, where are they coming from? They are coming from a nothingness, which is what we should understand and interpret as space. That becomes obvious when you look at his next argument, which is ah, can you read that, or is it getting hidden? Akshay?
We can read, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. So he says that the earth is a cylinder which is spinning on its own axis in this nothingness. Okay, it is spinning on its own axis, and the centrifugal force that is generated by, he didn't use the word centrifugal force, but he used a rough Greek equivalent of that. My Greek is zilch, so I'm not even going to try to pretend to tell you the Greek word for it. He talked about the earth spinning on its own axis. It's a cylinder, and because of the force generated by the spinning, it remains suspended in nothingness. Now that is an amazing theory. I don't know if you found it amazing, but I find it amazing. Okay. And this is pre-Socratic times. Pre-Socratic times. So he had this particular idea. Then the next idea that he had, where should I put that? Let me put it here. Day and night caused by the spinning, and he also goes on, no, he also goes on to say everything has a tendency to fall. He says these are the things. Day and night are caused by the spinning of the earth, and he talks about everything having a tendency to fall. He was investigating into it before he died. He hadn't finished his investigation. I'll pick it up from here tomorrow. Running out of time. You need to go to the next class. So have a good day. The good
Thank
part
you, sir.
is you get rid of me early in the morning. You know, usually people say when whatever is nasty, finish it raw, get rid of it, and then you can do the pleasant work. So when you get rid of me, then you have the rest of the day is absolutely pleasant. So thank you very much for putting up with me, and I'll tomorrow and day after are holidays, right?
Yes,
Is
sir.
tomorrow Ugadi?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so tomorrow and day after is Ambedkar's birthday. So see you on Thursday.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you. Happy
Thank
Ugadi,
you
sir.
very much.
Have a good
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Sunil Garu. Thank you.
Sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Okay. Right off.